Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Sunday night live stream for Collinge for President and also studentloanjustice.org. If you're new to the group, welcome. I'm glad you found us. If you forget everything I say tonight, remember at least this. It is absolutely critical that you tell everyone you know with student loans about our campaign, collingeforpresident.com. This campaign depends wholly and entirely to get off the ground of making sure that every student loan borrower in the country is aware of our campaign. If we can do that, and the media will not help us. Trust me, word of mouth is all we have, ladies and gentlemen. But if we can do that by, say, May, June, say summertime, this campaign has a very real shot. So if ever you were going to do anything to proactively help to solve your student loan problem, because these are your loans, just please tell everyone you know with student loans about this campaign. So anyways, I hope everything is going well out there in the world. There's a lot going on our end. We did an interview yesterday in New York with a forum. If you look up or down on our Facebook group or our Twitter feed or on our YouTube channel, you can see the interview for yourself. We're doing another President's Day presidential, call it a debate. I don't think it's going to be a whole lot of argument going on. But it'll be a presidential forum / debate at the very same place where we did that interview yesterday. So as you look up or down our Facebook group, Twitter feed, and find that YouTube channel and check it out tomorrow, President's Day, at I believe 7:30 p.m. Eastern time. Should be fun. So, ladies and gentlemen, tonight I want to talk to you about a couple of things. I'm going to roll out my campaign platform for cutting spending, an unpleasant topic, but we certainly need to talk about it. But first, I just want to give you the news of the day. And the news of this past week has been that the Biden administration is doing exactly what I knew they would do. So I don't know if it was an article, maybe it was a press release, I can't remember. Came out this week. It went viral all over the mainstream media, as you might imagine, about how the Biden administration is leaving no stone unturned to find a way to cancel student loan debt, right? And ladies and gentlemen, I've been doing this for 20 years now. I've been living and breathing this topic. I'm the first student loan activist in the nation. Studentloanjustice.org is the first grassroots group devoted to student loan borrowers. We live and breathe this stuff, and me and many people on our group will be very happy to explain to you in great detail why the Biden administration and the Department of Education he oversees have no true desires or intentions of actually canceling any student loans. So the most recent wrinkle that goes along with that headline, we're going to leave no stone unturned to cancel student loans. They now say that they are going to use the negotiated rulemaking session, which is something that the department's been doing for decades now. We've been participating in them since around 2007. Negotiated rulemaking is where the Department of Education can modify the Code of Federal Regulations to do whatever they want. And so in years past, we have seen negotiated rulemaking be used for stuff like the gainful employment rule, for example, many other things. But ladies and gentlemen, I am here to tell you, in all the years I've been doing this, 2 decades now, never, not ever, not even one time has the negotiated rulemaking session led to anything meaningful, anything significant. And I'll tell you about the gainful employment rule. Gainful employment rule came in around 2009 or so. And the idea was to put a penalty on colleges where their students don't do well. So if you go to ITT Tech and say, yeah, you're going to get a great degree here, and you wind up not making gainful employment after you attend the college, then the college ultimately, if too many of their students weren't doing well, then they could be penalized, cut off from the lending program. So it was, arguably a fairly good idea. By the way, if you have any questions or comments, and I can see them on either Facebook or Twitter, go ahead and throw them out now. And you can ask me absolutely anything about any issue, because I'm running for president now, and I have to speak to all issues other than student loans. But anyways, throw out your comments. If I can see them, I'll respond to them. So the gainful employment rule came and went through negotiated rulemaking for years and years, 3, 4, 5 years. A rule actually ended up being implemented. But ladies and gentlemen, I'm here to tell you the process is an inherently corrupted process, where the people that wind up guiding whatever they want to do through to whatever you want to call completion, they are those student loan companies, they are the colleges, they're the people who are making money out of this scam. It's the way it's always been. And even here today, I'm telling you, ladies and gentlemen, please believe me when I tell you, this is absolutely no different. And if you actually read the articles about the current Biden administration plan, read between the lines. In most of the articles that I've seen, it sort of towards the bottom of the article says, well, this process may be vulnerable to lawsuits and this and that and the other thing. Well, here's an example. I don't have perfect numbers off the top of my head about gainful employment, but gainful employment came, and it actually finally happened after many years of this nonsense. As best as I've been able to determine, the number of colleges who actually wound up, and there are a ton of really terrible colleges, guys, where their students wind up doing horribly. The number of colleges I remember getting sanctioned under gainful employment was like two colleges. It may have been more than that. It may have been 3, 4, 5, but we're talking single digits, ladies and gentlemen. And by the time the gainful employment rule actually went live, it was a joke. It had been completely defanged. It had been bureaucratized to the point of meaninglessness. So, like this current thing that Biden is talking about, they're talking about canceling loans for people who experience hardship, whatever that means. And in weeks past, we've seen that they say, for example, people who currently owe more now than when they graduated. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I am here to tell you that 85% of all borrowers owe more now than when they graduated. So if you're going to cancel the loans for those people, that's like 38 million people. You may as well just cancel the whole entire lending program. Ladies and gentlemen, again, be smart. Believe me when I tell you that is not going to happen. There is no way they will ever let this happen. This federal student loan program is a golden cash cow for the Department of Education, for the colleges, for the lenders, and for a network of these NGOs in and around Washington, D.C., including conservative NGOs, and in fact, I'd say almost especially conservative NGOs for whatever reason, who fight tooth and nail against student loan cancellation. So whatever Joe Biden and the Biden administration are promising, it is an election year bluff. It is the easiest way to say to promise the sun and the moon and the stars, knowing full well that it will never, ever happen. And my last point on this, the Biden administration is not turning over every stone. The two stones that we strongly, emphatically pushed the Biden administration to do before the 2020 election were two things: cancel student loans by executive order, which obviously started with this group, and we are the reason that became a thing. And lo and behold, before the election, Biden was promising roughly, ambiguously, vaguely to do that. He never did it. He never canceled student loans by executive order. Donald Trump actually canceled student loans by executive order with, well, he did it twice. Donald Trump did it twice. And arguably, even Joe Biden did it by extending the repayment pause. That canceled by executive order a lot of federal student loan debt. So, but what Biden is doing currently, guys, is he's pointing to these loans that were canceled through any of the income-driven repayment plans, public service loan forgiveness. These are loans that most of them should have been canceled years or decades ago. Finally, they're finally getting around to canceling a few loans, and Biden is pointing to that. Now, let's back up for a minute, and there's a second point I'll get to, but on student loan cancellation by executive order, Joe Biden did not use the Higher Education Act to cancel student loans. The Higher Education Act gives the Secretary of Education very broad authority to waive, compromise, release the loans. I'm not going to read you the law. I'm not going to cite the law for you, but well, okay. It's Section 1082 of the Higher Education Act. Section 1082, A6, parentheses A, parentheses 6. You can see it for yourself. Joe Biden, when he tried his feckless, doomed to fail loan cancellation, the $10,000 thing or $20,000 if you got the Pell Grant, he did not use the Higher Education Act. He used a weird set of laws I won't discuss. Ladies and gentlemen, let me just, again, take me at my word, because I do live and breathe this stuff. I never say things that are untrue. It was very obvious to me and to anyone who knows anything about the federal student loans, the political dynamics and everything around it. They never had any desire or intentions of, they did not want that Supreme Court case to win. They did not want it to go through. The whole thing was performative. It was for politics. They are doing the very same thing now, guys. They're doing the very same thing now. If Joe Biden was truly leaving no stone unturned, he would tomorrow cancel any amount of student loans, all of them, some of them, whatever he wants, by the Higher Education Act. And it would probably wind up in court. That's fine. I think it would prevail. I think the law is unambiguous enough that nobody could. It would be very hard to defeat in court. And if he tried that and he demanded that certain Supreme Court justices like Alito and Clarence Thomas, who have provable, blatant conflicts of interest with active opponents, billionaire opponents of student loan cancellation, then it certainly would go through, no doubt. Biden is not doing that. He's not leaving that stone unturned. Another thing that Biden could do, and this is the second thing that we pushed his campaign very hard to do, was to stop opposing student loan borrowers in bankruptcy court. That's something that the president can do. I spoke with his campaign manager in 2019 or 2020 about it. They said they would do it. I talked to James Koval before he became undersecretary. They said they would try. They didn't do that, guys. What they did was they rejiggered the entire bankruptcy process, where undue hardships, for all intents and purposes, still remains. Almost no one is getting their loans canceled, discharged through bankruptcy. They completely faked it. And again, right now, today, Joe Biden could make a call to James Koval, Undersecretary of Education, and say, okay, forget about that new bankruptcy process. Just delete the whole thing from existence. Let's pretend it never happened. Stop opposing student loan borrowers in adversarial proceedings in bankruptcy court. Do that right now. There's very valid justification, legal justification for doing this. The definition of undue hardship is sufficiently vague and ill-defined to warrant such a move. Joe Biden could do that tomorrow, and he doesn't. So those are the two most important stones that need to be unturned. And those are the two stones that they will not unturn. So Joe Biden is not leaving no stone unturned. Him and the student loan mafia in Washington, D.C. are building a stone wall around the federal student loan program. And that is the stupidest thing in the world, because those people know what I know. And what I know is that 80% of all borrowers are not paying today. I think that's going to go up, not down, in the coming months. I think fewer people and fewer people and fewer people will be paying as time goes on. By the time the election rolls around, I would not be surprised if 90% of all federal student loan borrowers would not pay on their loans. The lending system is finished, ladies and gentlemen. It is done. It's toast. But for the just absolute lack of ethics, courage, conviction, spine in the Washington, D.C., it would have been ended. The loans would have been canceled. It would have been replaced years, maybe even decades ago. So that's what's going on currently, guys. Tonight, I'm going to do a brief thing about my presidential campaign, collingeforpresident.com. So far in this campaign, I have only rolled out a couple of issues. Student loans, obviously. I will cancel student loans by executive order, the way I said on day one of my presidency, and I will do everything else presidentially possible to get this lending system done, finished, toast, thrown onto the scrap heap of failed U.S. policy experiments. I also have rolled out my tax plan, which involves taxing the spit out of the wealthy. And I'm going to bring you to a quick graph just to bring you maybe a little bit up to speed, because spending and taxing, they're kind of two sides of the same coin. So let me just show you quickly where I was at about taxing the rich. And this is my justification. We are at exactly the same spot right now in terms of the amount of money, the national debt versus the GDP that we were in 1944, right? As World War II was fading into the sunset. What we did then was increase taxes on the wealthy to over 90%, over 90%. And I already discussed this at length a couple of weeks ago. So check out that live stream if you didn't see it. But what I didn't really explain also was that not only did we increase taxes to over 9% on the wealthy, we also decreased federal spending by around 77%. Can you imagine if we were to decrease federal spending by 77% today? I think that would be that could be a massacre. That could be a bloodbath. So as president, I'm not proposing that we cut spending that much. I think that's just a little much. But let me give you the sort of the overview. So I know a lot of people don't really understand a lot about federal budgeting. It's very simple though, guys. And let me just dial this in quickly for you. So here it is. This is the napkin sketch. Every year we spend a little, in recent years, we spend a little over $6 trillion. We take in a little over $5 billion. So it's a slightly more than $1 billion is what's called the deficit. It's the difference between what you bring in and what you spend. So we're spending more than we're bringing in by about $1 trillion. And so we're adding around $1 trillion to the national debt right now, 2023, 2022, 2024. So that's $1 billion shortfall that we need to make up. Quite frankly, based on my tax plan, I think we will probably exceed an increase of $1 trillion. I think we'll make up that gap. But ladies and gentlemen, we have $3 trillion in debt right now as a country. We've got to cut spending. We've just got to. So I'm gonna switch quickly to one more graph that I think may be of value to you. So this is basically where we spend our money. More than half of that is now in what's called mandatory spending. So that's like Social Security, it's healthcare, Medicare. It's also federal employees' wages, benefits, etc. Stuff like that. Stuff that supposedly we can't touch. And then the other part is what's called discretionary spending. That includes 45% military spending, and that the other half of that discretionary spending, excluding the interest thing that you see there, the 8% slice of the pie. I'm not even worried about that right now. Discretionary spending is what we spend on all of our programs through all of our agencies, that sort of spending. So the grand total there is over $6 trillion. We need to cut that entire circle by, I would say, about $1 trillion. It's $6 trillion now. We need to get it down to $5 trillion. So we're talking about something like a 12-13% reduction in that whole pie. If we were to do that, ladies and gentlemen, so in other words, if we were to get our tax revenues up, like flip the 6 and the 5 trillion. If instead of spending 6 trillion, taking in 5 trillion every year, if we could just flip that to where we're taking in 6 trillion a year and we're spending 5 trillion a year, well, all of a sudden our national debt is going down by $1 trillion a year. That is the adult, mature, obvious course that we as a country need to take. So this is the hard part. The cutting spending part is always hard because that's where everybody and their brother says, yeah, you can cut everything, but don't cut mine because my budget, my this, that. Well, sorry, guys. As president, I'm going to recommend across the board cuts on discretionary spending on a sliding scale. Like I do think it's important to pick and choose where you should decrease spending, maybe not decrease it quite so much, maybe decrease it more. I think we need to decrease spending a little more on the military side of that discretionary. We spend way too much on foreign wars, guys. Whatever happened to, beating our swords back into plowshares? We just got done dumping $8 trillion into Afghanistan and Iraq. It looks like we're going to be dumping hundreds of billions of dollars into Ukraine and other places. But, our military budget is just absolutely out of control. Most people agree. So we're certainly going to cut there. I think that we also need to do an across-the-board cut of federal employees' pay. Now, if you work for the federal government, I'm sorry about that. I would do it in a progressive way so that, like, if you're a park ranger, building a trail or something and you make 60 grand a year, I don't think those people should have a cut in pay. I'm talking about if you're making over 100 grand a year and you've got just one of the hundreds of thousands of federal salaried positions that are of dubious worth, yeah, screw that. You got to pay. Federal employees have had it very good over the past years and decades, guys. Even during the government shutdowns where they didn't have to work for like a couple of weeks or a month, they got back pay for doing nothing. For these people, and their federal pensions are very, very, very generous, and those are paid, by the way, out of part of that entitlement spending. So across the board cuts in discretionary spendings. Somewhere between, I'd say, 5 and even as high as 20%. I think that's going to easily save us a couple $100 billion a year. I haven't put pen to paper yet. Check out my website, collingeforpresident.com, in the coming, I'm going to say, week or so, and I will actually put pen to paper and get down to the brass tacks of my cutting spending plan. Also, people say, oh, we can't touch Social Security. Well, that's true. I agree. When it comes to benefits for people, Social Security checks, welfare checks, food stamps, things that people actually use. Gordon in our group was mentioning a subsidy for internet for poor people stuff like that people actually use, I agree. We should not cut that stuff. If it's actually helping real people, we should not cut it. But that is not most entitlement spending, guys. Most entitlement spending, well, okay, Social Security and Medicare are a huge part of entitlement spending. That's true. I don't want to cut any benefits. I don't want to cut any healthcare benefits. It's not like, oh, you can't get this procedure because no. However, we can cut spending in this area a number of ways. Like, look at Medicare. We pay, in my humble opinion, far too much for very expensive, overpriced procedures, medical procedures that the hospitals are just, they're raking in the cash. We should very seriously cut our Medicare reimbursement rate to hospitals. If we were to cut those between, depending on how ridiculous they're overcharging us, between, I don't know, 10 or 20%. Well, again, that's what we're talking about. Certainly tens, probably hundreds of billions of dollars a year that we could save. There's also some very creative things that I would like to do as president. Think about this. You have a double bypass surgery that you get done in the United States. Medicare gets billed, $600,000 for the procedure. Well, ladies and gentlemen, for surgery like that, you can go to India, for example, and you can get doctors that were largely trained, went to college in the United States. In most cases, many cases, certainly, you can get the same procedure in another country like India for, $60,000, $70,000. What is wrong with that? People do medical tourism all the time. Why should the federal government be prevented from using out-of-country healthcare systems if they can save money doing it and if the quality of care is as good? Or maybe even like 90% as good or whatever, because I know the medical establishment is going to scream bloody murder and say, oh, no, India, no, it's terrible care there, terrible care. I think it's probably not nearly as terrible as one might think. It might not be. Anyways, these are things that we can do, ladies and gentlemen. We can cut the amount of bloat in this federal budget very easily. And, quite frankly, I think we can probably not only gain over $1 trillion, maybe 1.5 trillion increased tax revenues through all the things that I said, taxing the wealthy, Wall Street transaction tax, other things, getting rid of the cap on paying into Social Security taxes, etc., the income cap. We can probably cut spending by well over $1 trillion. So we could be knocking more than $1 trillion off of our national debt every year only by controlling our spending and our taxing better. It's not rocket science, guys. We're not talking about a huge difference, 6 trillion to 5 trillion and then 5 trillion to 6 trillion. That's nothing like what they did after World War II. That's not cutting spending by 77%. And maybe we should do that, quite frankly. I think the federal government has needed a massive haircut for many years. But like I said, my presidential platform is pretty moderate, except for the student loan thing, which people say is radical. It's not radical. The student loan thing is inevitable. And even my raising taxes and cutting spending, this is not radical. It's moderate. I see it as the middle ground. We could get radical, and let me know if you really want me to, and maybe I will. I don't think it will really help my campaign, though. I want to keep all my other agenda items to stuff that the 40 million distressed student loan borrowers out there can at least live with, and so I don't want to get too crazy. And even my plan for reparations, which you just mentioned reparations and people think, oh, that's radical. No, my reparations plan, which includes not only for the descendants of slaves, but also for indentured servants, descendants of indentured servants, that is a very unifying, harmonious plan. Of course, it needs a lot of work to see if it's actually doable. It may turn out that it's just too hard to prove descendancy, that sort of thing. But I hope you can appreciate the very balanced, unifying approach with which I am crafting my presidential agenda. So that's basically in a nutshell, guys. Unfortunately, I can't see your comments tonight. I apologize. I'm going to look for the comments after the fact, and we'll see what we can get done. But so I hope that makes sense to you. What I'm proposing, everybody knows. Every federal budget analyst who's honest would agree with me that yes, we need to significantly increase our taxation of the wealthy. We need to close loopholes. We need to transaction tax is not a viable way of putting a control on Wall Street profiteers. Doing a wealth tax is a very good idea. You know, the wealthiest 1% in our country own around 38, if not 40 trillion dollars in assets. Like, we could completely erase our national debt just on the backs of 1% of our people. I'm not saying that we should do that. What I'm proposing is very moderate, but again, I digress. I hope you have an appreciation for what I'm trying to do here, ladies and gentlemen. I'm trying to attract the largest number of common sense people, beginning with student loan borrowers, obviously. But I hope that you will take it on faith, and I promise I won't disappoint you, that by the time I roll out my entire presidential agenda, I hope and believe and pray that it will be something that 95% of the population can agree with. You, if you're a partisan person, one way or the other, you won't agree with everything in my platform, but you'll agree with most things. And particularly if you're a student loan borrower, you will be able to live with it. So that's what I got for tonight. I'll check for your comments later. Be sure and check tomorrow at that YouTube channel. Check out our President's Day debate. Last thing I will say, please make a donation to my campaign. These are the critical weeks and months where we're laying the groundwork for what is to come. And, you know, we can do this campaign on very little funding, guys, very little. I think we've raised around $1,000 so far, which is great. But we got to do a little better than that, guys. We can't do it on nothing. You know, even just registering with all the various states so that our write-in ballots will count is going to cost probably several $1,000s. So if you believe, regardless of what you think my chances are in November, know that this campaign and the pressure it will exert on both parties, both Biden and Trump and the Democrats and Republicans, to actually solve the student loan problem before the election should be all you need to realize to support my campaign. And as I begged you to do at the beginning of this broadcast, I will re-beg tonight to close it. Tell everyone you know with student loans, you know them, they're out there. Tell them about this campaign. When you do, we will win. So buck up, get in the game, help us fight. It feels very good to fight this fight. The founders are on our side. 40 million people are on our side, whether they know it yet or not. And I'm looking forward to the weeks and months to come. So I'll be back next Sunday night. Remember, 7 p.m. Eastern time. I'm going to make this a regular thing. If you have any specific issues you'd like me to cover next week, let me know. And I'll see you next week. Good luck. Godspeed. God bless everyone. And God bless America.